Test, test, test. Can anyone hear me?
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Miss May. How are you doing today? Okay, welcome to the second era talk. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Miss May. Could I ask, how are you doing for today?
Hi, how are you?
Sorry, can I ask one more time, Miss May? How are you doing for today?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Good.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of Era Talk. As we know before, Era Talk is a forum for discussing certain global issues. And today we have one particular issue to be discussed, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Okay, so this topic was raised with the intention to create a space to learn more about the current situation. This conflict is increasing every day, and thousands of lives are lost constantly every day. So the Israeli-Palestinian politics is an issue that has become increasingly important in our world crisis. But the escalation of the current situation encourages us to see this issue in a more sensible and scientific approach. Therefore, it is hoped that this discussion will be able to encourage our understanding of the current crisis that is happening in the Palestine. Now, before we discuss with our speaker today, I will introduce okay. Uh, the Secretary of International Relations Study Program, Mr. Muhammad Faisal Alfian, SIPMA, would like to give an opening remark for today's talk. Faisal, you may answer the.
Okay, thank you, Mas Davin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear my voice clearly? Mas Davin?
Yes, Mas, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, our beloved student. It is such an honor for us to welcome you to IRUD Talk, entitled How the Middle Eastern Issues Affecting European Muslims Community and Islamophobia in Issues. I am very thankful to you, Mrs. Mai Anwar, PhD, for presenting us with us today despite your busy schedule. I also wish to thank you all the committee, IRUDLab, who also organized this wonderful event. As we know, 7 October, Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups launched Operation Al-Aqsa Flood as coordinated assault on the land and and it is about the 45 days since the start. Israel has launched the military operation that we can identify as the war crime, crimes against humanity, and a massive genocide against Palestinians. This is even, IRUD Talks will try to understanding the conflict and political implication of the Middle East to the Muslim community in Europe, and understanding the implication provide a new context for Islamophobia in the European landscape. Hopefully, all the participants will get a new perspective of Middle East conflict and implication to the community. Thank you for your kind attention and good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, while we wait for Miss Palupi, let us have a little discussion of our own. So, first of all, maybe let me introduce Miss Palupi since we have her full CV right here. So Ms. Palupi is International Relations lecturer at the Department of International Relations, Universitas Diponegoro. She earned her bachelor degree majoring in International Relations with focus in social and cultural development from Universitas Brawijaya. She then obtained her master's degree majoring in International Politics. If we look closer to both of her graduate and undergraduate theses, Ms. Palupi focuses on UNESCO, cultural and world heritage. For her professional experiences, Ms. Palupi began her professional journey by doing her internship at the International Relations Division of Indonesia, Police headquarters in 2012. In 2016, she became an interpreter at PUM Netherlands Senior Expert. In 2017 to 2018, Ms. Palupi became the media analyst at Indonesia Indicator, in which she managed to analyze media through big data or artificial intelligence systems. In 2019 to 2020, she came back to the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Brawijaya, as a research assistant. As both lecturer and researcher, Ms. Palupi has published several academic journals, and her research interest revolves around international studies, cultural, and world heritage. Unfortunately, Ms. Palupi cannot attend our meeting for today because she still has several agendas to be fulfilled, which is unfortunate. But she will attend the meeting later this afternoon. So after I read about her CV, let us continue straight to the materials. Ms. Mai Anwar, please, you can explain or discuss about our topics for today. Time and place is yours.
Hi, would it be possible if I could share the PowerPoint?
Yeah,
Okay,
you can share your
thank you.
PowerPoint right now. Thank you.
Can you see this?
we can see the PowerPoint is visible. Thank you.
You see it? Okay, sure, no problem. Okay. So today I'll be talking about specifically in the UK, but also just briefly about Germany as well, about how what happened after the October 7, how it impacted the Muslim community in the UK and in Germany. So sorry. Yeah. So just to give you a brief background about the response of October 7 attack. So before we talk about Islamophobia, I think it's important that we are aware what the reaction from the European reaction, basically the leader the EU. So since October 7, the EU and the head of the government of France and the United Kingdom and Germany and Netherlands and Greece and Italy have supported Israel, and by basically taking sides with them and having travelled to Israel, and but because of that they have received criticism because they seem to be double-standard when it comes to look at the situation with Russia and Ukraine, and it seems like the rap in Gaza, it has not received the same amount of attention. But since then, so for example, like in the UK, that we have a policy where where we are allowed to protest. But however, when we have a Home Secretary, she basically have labelled pro-Palestinian protest as hate march, and she have labelled saying a slogan such as from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, as anti-Semitism, and so because of that, and which made it harder for Muslims and people who support Palestinian cause to basically express their views. And most importantly, and she also basically pushed the police to arrest people who actually wave the Palestinian flag in the street. And but because of that, it caused an issue among the British community, because at the end of the day we have a policy in the UK that protest is allowed. Freedom of expression has to be protected, but because of that it actually jeopardized these kind of rights. And moving to Germany, just like in the UK, Hamas is considered a terrorist organization. So, but however, in Germany, they have basically recently banned all kind of Hamas related activity, and basically anything related to pro-Palestine. And so for that reason, they have basically ordered to basically break apart the pro-Palestinian advocacy group, purely because they are just worried that it may spread anti-Israel and anti-Semitic ideas. And since October 7, the process was quite difficult to happen in Germany because people would often get arrested, and it's really hard to organise process. So we move on to the Islamophobia in the UK. So since October 7, there has been reports from October 7 to October 19, and I'm not sure if many of you are aware of what Taumama is. So Taumama is actually an organisation which actually stands for Tau, Measuring Anti-Muslim Attack. And what they do, they recorded Islamophobia report or the Kilkenny report, and sometimes people who may experience Islamophobia and anti-racist Muslim attack, anti-Muslim racism, and so there was reported Taumama, and then Taumama can help them with the case. So they have documented about 291 incidents of anti-Muslim hate. So about half happened online and half happened offline. And bear in mind that a lot of people who may have experienced Islamophobia, they tend to not to report them. And because of that, the number it's been quite low, but it should be higher. So, but I can see on the 9th of November, a month after the attack, Tamama had reported that back to 100% surges in Islamophobia. So people have reported that they experienced Islamophobia. It had gone high, and it has gone high to the point where people experience racism as well. So, for example, one of the cases that people have experienced that quite common that where people have often run a Muslim for being terrorists for supporting Palestine, and they will tell them to effort to Palestine, or they'll call them a terrorist, they'll really call them bombers, and there have been instances where women were hecked, like people who look Muslim, they would attack as well, and the racism, Islamophobia was so common that you can see on the social media. And there have been an issue and concern at school where teachers feel feel unsafe wearing headscarf because it may associate terrorism, and because of a remark they received among the students. So that's I've just given you a brief insight about Islamophobia in the UK. Bear in mind there's a lot more to talk about, but because we haven't got enough time, so I just want to move on to Islamophobia in Germany. So in Germany it's quite tricky because as I mentioned that Islamophobia and anti-Semitism often is quite high in Germany and in the UK, and for example, what happened in Palestine, it's very difficult to talk about it freely in Germany. As you can see, that people who live in Germany who actually supported the Palestinian cause have felt restrained in basically expressing their view about their concern for Gaza. And because of that, they're actually worried that they either will get arrested or they will lose their job, or basically people who actually immigrant or basically refugees as well, they were worried about losing their immigration status, and that is a bit concerned there. And this part it has been reported on Human Rights Watch, and Human Rights Watch actually basically documented very kind of human rights abuse in Europe. Like for example, we know what happened in France. France had similar incident, and it's an ethical concern when you talk about human rights perspective, because there seems to be double standard, and Germany, it's a secular country and it does value freedom of expression, but there seems to be selection when it comes to that. And in terms of Islamophobia attack, there was a report that happened about 3 weeks ago. Bear in mind, this report is 3 weeks ago. We can't really say what happened after that because I'm sure there's a lot more. So there's a German-based Turkish organization, and it's called DLTIB, and they had reported that there was about 81 attacks since the start of 2023, and just about half of them were related to what happened in Gaza. And so it's basically talking about the attack more specifically against the mosque, not the individual. So that just, you can see it's more about the mosque here. So you cannot imagine how much the individual must have experienced, as it's not mentioned here. So a lot can happen in the past few weeks, and that is a concern there. So I want to move on to basically just kind of understand the problematic when it comes to Islamophobia in Europe, in European context. So before we talk further about this, I kind of want to introduce you intersectionality theory. I'm sure some of you are aware of this theory and some may not. So that's fine because I can explain it quite briefly. So basically, it was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. She basically have termed it intersectionality, and in her words, she basically said intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides, where interlock and intersect. It is not simply that there is a race problem here and gender problem here, and a class of LGBTQ problem there. And so basically what she was talking about, she basically, just to give you a big background about her, she's actually a sociologist and a researcher. And what she basically found that she used that term to apply where Black women experience racism. And she also say that not just Black women just only experience racism, they also experience a sexism. And from there I used that theory to kind of explain a much more bigger issue when it comes to Islamophobia. And I'm sure there are basically a few people who have applied that theory. For example, Beverly Weber, she also used that term in the context of a German Muslim, and she basically found that in Germany there's a group called Action Coalition of Muslim women, and so what they have used this intersectional framework, and that framework basically acknowledges generalization of Islam. There's basically create a Venn diagram so you can understand there's the overlap between generalization, radicalization, and Islamophobia. So generalization is just not specifically focused on women, but also focused on Muslim men. And the reason why I put generalization rather than sexism, because as I say, it's just focused on men as well. And there's a lot more to it. And what I want to say is basically racialization is one of them as well that often overlap with generalization and Islamophobia come to it. And the reason why I created this is because in the UK about last year, before that the government had basically proposed to look into the definition of Islamophobia after being proposed by the all parliamentary Muslim group, and they basically gave it a term of a Islamophobia as basically a new form of racism, basically call it anti-Muslim racism. But the government in the UK does not recognise the definition, so that for that reason they decided to take up investigate and see how they would define it. And we've been waiting for quite a few years for that, and until last year, about this time last year, during Islamophobia awareness month, they decided to drop the plan. And from there it is questionable. People often, it's concerned because we have been waiting for a definition, and we have experienced Islamophobia in Europe, and it is concerned. And and as I was saying about generalization, the reason why I put that term is because Muslim men who look Muslim, so for example, South Asian men who had a beard, they tend to experience Islamophobia, and specifically at the airport in the UK. And we have a counter-terrorism policy, and we look at Schedule 7, which basically gives the people who work at the airport or at the port a right to kind of detain people up and basically stop and ask people questions, or detain them up to a certain amount of hours, if just in case they be deemed to associate anything with any kind of form of terrorist activity. And this is a lot of majority of Muslims that experience Islamophobia are actually South Asian, and they are both Muslim men and women. So I want to talk about a bit more about intersectional Islamophobia. So, and the reason why, before we go back to Palestine, it's so important because you have to understand the context behind what happened. What happened in Gaza. It's like I say, it's so much. It became institutionalized, and what I meant by institutionalized, it started basically more notably since 9/11. And basically from 9/11, we have so many kind of a policy. We just have a counter-terrorism policy for 9/11. And even now, I'm sure the updating policy become more strict compared to other European contexts. And for example, we have a basically counter-terrorism measuring, basically counter strategy, and or a short word called contest. And it's not mentioned here, but it's called contest, and it was introduced in 2003, and that was basically in reflection to 9/11. But from 2003 until 2006, it wasn't made out public until July 2006. It made out to public. So basically, what happened in 2006, we basically have a preventing violent extremism agenda, and what it does is basically address radicalization. So, contest had the influence. Basically, we have October, but we have 7/7 attack in the UK. So it had basically influenced the policy contact, and contact had a basically 4-piece plan. The 4-piece plan, and they basically go prevent, pursue, protect, and prepare. But each piece plan had its own, policy, and one of the most popular one is prevent. And prevent plan, it continues to be very, very controversial, and it is probably the most controversial among, at school and workplace, and even hospital. And the purpose of prevent, it's actually kind of like counter radicalization, or basically radicalization to all forms of terrorism. So not just like Islamist terrorism, but anyone that basically far right far right ideology, or people may have extreme view. And remember, I mentioned that earlier on, Hamas is considered a terrorist organization. And this is important because I'm going to get to the point. But before I get to the point, I'm going to kind of explain a bit more about prevent and why it's an ethical concern. So, as I said, the policy when actually keep evolving. So when we look at 2011, contest was basically focused on Al Qaeda, and then we have ISIS. It kind of shifted focus on ISIS, and because of ISIS, it actually caused a bit more conspiracy threat in the UK because there was concern there, so they were looking more policy revising, and we can see from basically between 2011 and 2018, even 2023 right now, they kind of produced several basically few documents, but with similar but also distinctive objectives. And basically in 2018, they become more strict in terms of safeguarding, and with basically introducing rehabilitation, and in a point that explaining the process of how you basically refer people that may suspect to radicalization to prevent strategy or prevent program. So because of that, and this is where I was kind of introducing previous Venn diagram, because people who tend to basically use a ethnic profiling, and other ethnic profiling is illegal in the UK, and there's no doubt in that, but people often use it and subconsciously, and so for that reason, the people who perceive looking Muslim tend to refer to prevent, most likely refer to prevent. And so for example, there was a most ethical concern there, for instance, that back in a few years ago, there was a little boy who drew an image of his father cutting cucumber, but because he was quite small and he couldn't pronounce cucumber properly, and the teacher would ask him what the boy was doing, and he was saying, my dad was cooking cooking bun. So it sounded like, maybe his father was creating bomb, and that because of that, he actually refer the little boys to prevent, and bear in mind, prevent when I say ethical concern, it actually says in the document in the record, and it can affect your traveling, it can affect your job, looking for a job. So even though there was no further action taken, it's still recorded in the system, and that is the problem. And when we have organisations like, for example, in the UK, like Liberty, they have basically found that a lot of people who were referred to prevent will still remain in the record, and that affected their life in the future. And a lot of them were Muslim, unfortunately. And like I said, I can see that in the UK, since when we got the Home Secretary Suella Braverman, she wanted to basically pressure the police to consider flying Palestine flag or trying the slogan to be like from a river to the sea to be criminalized, and basically associating that kind of support, whether directly or not she has said it, but associating supporting terrorist organization, that kind of, as I say, it gives people, like I say, Islamophobia institutionalized. People will basically, especially if you're a teacher or you're working, you're going to perceive all these kind of languages, and you're thinking, like, people who, it's going to be difficult to be able to separate people who actually support Palestinian human rights and then people who actually support terrorist organizations. And that's why a lot of Muslims feel a bit concerned, a bit worried, because they can't expect their concern for Palestine without worrying that they might be branded as terrorists. And the problem is, like I said, Suella Braverman, she, even though she had been back, recently, but damage had been done, because earlier this year, we had a Tory conservative. So we have a Conservative Party where there's a Baroness Warty. She is not an MP, but she would basically work at a cabinet, and she's a victim, and she basically voices a criticism against Braverman's statement. She had made Islamophobic and racist comments, and basically assuming that majority men who groomed, groomed women, they're actually British Pakistani. And so for that reason, Warty had basically branded what Braverman has said is actually race baiting. Essentially race baiting kind of what we actually understand is as directly target people specifically on their race. And as I said, there's, you can see overlap between Muslim and generalization, racialization, Pakistani, and then Muslim. There's all overlap, and that is the problem there. And so this is why, like I said, prevent itself is a concern, because, like I said, we have heard an incident in the UK, it happened within spoken word, but also when you read stuff on social media, like for example Twitter, people have expressed the concern about worrying that whether if you talk about prevent, or basically talk about prevent itself is a bit worrying. And when you talk about your concern about Palestine, or whether you want to take part of process, you can be basically referred to prevent. And like I said, Islamophobia has become so institutionalized that we cannot really imagine how we kind of it just not happened. What happened October 7th. There's a lot of overlap, and like I said, would prevent, regardless of how much criticism had received by basically some politician, human rights organization. Yes, because of that, people who reviewed the prevent, they themselves had basically had reputation for giving Islamophobic remark. So and then when we have Islamophobia, the definition of Islamophobia have been basically the plan for it to have a definition have been dropped, and then you have Islamophobia going high since October 7, and then you get people who not necessarily the right person to give a review on prevent. It actually added a bit more dynamic, and bear in mind there's a lot more element to Islamophobia and how people basically become to the point where it becomes systematic Islamophobia, meaning that in public fear. And you have to look at incidents what happened with the ISIS, and if you look at the media often play the role. And when we look at the ISIS, what happened with the ISIS, they had a newspaper where we have Jihadi John, and he's known for, basically talk about beheading people who've been held captive. And then the kind of word ISIS and beheaded, it becomes such a buzzword because from the October 7 attack, from that week, the Israeli government have released a video on the YouTube, and that can be found on basically children video added advert. And in that video, I'm sure some of you have seen that video, and that video Israel had basically associated Hamas with ISIS, and used the word Hamas had beheaded 40 babies, even though it had been disputed by Israel themselves, and also CNN had retracted statement, and even the President Biden, his office, also retracted statement. But the damage had already been done, because, like I said, these were the keyword beheaded and ISIS. When you kind of put that word, it kind of feeds basically it become like an earworm. People kind of like remember that the kind of specific keyword, it actually basically play the role and makes people think that, when you talk about Gaza or basically you criticize Israel, there's an overlap between ISIS and what happened in Gaza, and that is concerned there, and that's what people often feel as Muslims or people who generally support all form of human rights will basically feel uncertain in expressing their support. And that's in the UK that I'm talking about, because as I said, in Germany there's a lot more to it, and that's a completely different situation. And and we can talk about that later if you want to know a bit more about that. But UK, it had a history. When you talk about counter-terrorism policy, it's so deep and it's so big and so complicated that it's often overlap. It means that the policies are already there, which make it easier for to kind of like unlawfully basically racially profile people, or basically unlawfully detain people based on their own view. And it can be concerning there. But yeah, that's all I can say from my side. Yeah.
Hello, Miss May, can you hear my voice? Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Good evening in Indonesian time, Miss Mai Anwar. Can you hear my voice? I apologize because I'm being late. I have another thing to
It's
do.
okay.
Yeah, and I have to enter the room later after I finish my task. Okay. It's very interesting for our students and especially us who maybe see the conflict in a different way, in your own perspective, because as much as we want to, we experience and maybe learn about this conflict, and especially the uh, long period of conflict between Israel and Palestine, it cannot be very close if we do not hear from the first people around them. And you, Mr. Haji, of course, offer a genuine perspective how far that happens in there, and maybe the effect of Islamophobia, even though you are not present in the geographical conflict, but you experience the same maybe discrimination or also condition that make you feel uncomfortable in that place. But I'm very interested with your intersectionality theory, Ms. Min. Can you maybe explain it again, or maybe you have any example for our students that we should see this conflict in intersectionality lens or scope? Thank you, Ms. May. Maybe for the others, if you have any question for Ms. May, you can raise your hand or give the question to the computer and I will read it to you. Okay, Ms. May, the time is yours. Hello? Hello, Ms. May, can you hear my voice?
I can hear you,
Hello.
yeah.
Okay. Maybe you can explain more what about
Sure.
the meaning of intersectionality theory. Maybe you can explain it again to us, and how can you
Sure.
relate it with your experience in
Sure.
maybe what happened in Europe, especially after the invasion and the rising terms of Islamophobia. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely have a basically a personal experience. Before the October 7th, I have experienced Islamophobic incident at workplace, and that would kind of overlap to basically me wearing headscarf, and being me basically being a British Muslim as well, and at the workplace, I have a certain colleague have basically questioned about my interest in my study, and I was discussing my interest to do a master's degree at IC, and was basically hearing about this, and I was talking about my purpose of doing this degree that actually kind of challenged it, and that was basically, and he challenged me and just basically saying that, oh, surely, like out of nowhere, surely he was saying that surely people have the right to draw Prophet Muhammad. And I was just thinking that I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sure they do, but that is not my concern. That my concern is more about how people feel, Islamophobia, basically how they make them feel. Like people often experience attack, for women who wear hijab may not feel safe in public because people might target them based on their appearance, and then he kind of shifts that into talking about for example, if you're working at the factory and sometimes there's a machinery problem where the headscarf can getting caught into a machine, so it would be bad to wear a haircut. I'm like, if that's the case, I'm sure that people can cover their hair in a way that wouldn't necessarily caught in a machine. So that wouldn't make sense. And he was like, yeah, sure. He's like, oh, I'm just playing devil's advocate. And then he'll just keep challenging questions, and just to kind of see my reaction. And, obviously I didn't give it to him. But because of that, it becomes to the point where I become so desensitized. When I talk about desensitized, it's basically Islamophobia becomes so institutionalized, and when I talk about Islamophobia, it becomes so institutionalized. It's they kind of create a full level of basically institutional form of racism. So what I meant by that, just give me a second. I'm just gonna try and explain a bit more. And basically full level racism. And when I talk about racism, I actually applied that for Islamophobia. So the full level, and they basically started from internalized, and then interpersonal, and then institutional and thematic. The internalized is basically what you started first. So, for example, internalized is what you have your own belief. So, your own view. And then interpersonal is that you have it like just basically through word or through action of certain individual, and then it becomes institutionalized, as in like across organization or government or a nation, not just policy but also practice. So like when you talk about prevent itself, it's actually institutional Islamophobic. And then systematic, and systematic is what kind of led ongoing Islamophobia that maintained by the society. But because of Islamophobia, it's actually a thing, it becomes so systematic to the point that I'm kind of used to seeing that, and to me, I've become desensitized. And luckily, I never experienced physical violence or any form of verbal violence. But like I said, people often make Islamophobic remarks, often get away with it because it becomes the norm. So a lot of people often don't accept that, and often people don't. And after the October 7 attack, I experienced Islamophobia and what they did comment about me expressing my concern for finding God and a Palestinian who is leading their relative into. And one time I'm actually make a talking about an individual. You can see that the correlation, basically both individuals, one I was talking about the workplace and the one that social media, they're actually both white men, and they're white men, and they made comment, and the one that I'll talk about social media, he made a comment saying that, oh, it's good to see you, she shows solidarity, Palestinian against Hamas, something like that. I was just like, what? And so it was a bit odd because I'm thinking there was a tone, and then we had a back and forth comment, and I was like, why are you basically making a assumption that support a terrorist organization when I don't? And I said no one deserves to die. People, whether in Palestine or Israel, people deserve to die, And that's why I made that comment, and he was like, are you criticizing because I only focused on the Palestinian? And I was talking about that's basically my connection through my Palestinian friend, and that's why I was talking about them. And but the thing is that I shouldn't have to just about myself. But it's the problem that I'm not the only one who have experienced it. People have often experienced it in the UK, people in other part of the European context, and people like in Germany and other countries as well. So there's another example. Basically, last week I've spoken to a Palestinian individual, and she basically had a kufiya and wrap around her head, and it was just like a little sash, but she was wrapped around like a band around her head, and you can see one side it had a Palestinian flag, and the other side had other compound, and she was telling me that basically on the bus at one time, it was going basically on the bus in North London, and they just put a white woman on the bus and told her "F you, bitch," we're gonna wipe power. We're gonna wipe power on Palestine. Blah blah. All these racist, Islamophobic comments drop on her, and I was really shocked when she told me this. I was like, "Pete told me you have reported to the repeat." She's like, "No, I haven't, because I don't see the point of it. What can I do?" And it's not only time that I'm hearing this. I'm hearing a lot of Muslims who experience stuff like that. They have not reported to the repeat, and because of that, when I talked about earlier on, the sector has often been underreported, and some of you may think, 291 report seems quite a lot, but it's actually a lot more. And and I was actually basically begged her. She reported, and I told her, look, you can either report into a Talmama or other organisation, basically called Islamophobic Response Unit, and they are basically organization that they give legal advice that people who experience Islamophobia, and actually these people actually work there, actually lawyers. So I should just coming in bar, and this is where I'll talk about systematic Islamophobia. And that is where you can see there's a load of overlap into it. And I'm not just talking about my own experience, because I can talk about a lot of people's experience, and unfortunately I can't talk about it a lot because there's a lot of, and personally know people have experienced something like this. Some of them are actually relative of mine, and some of them are actually my friends, and it's a lot more common than you think, and often gone unreported because many of them have thought the police were not taking them seriously, and even when they reported it, there often been no further action have been taken, so it just report, and that had been off-putting for people.
Hello, thank you, Miss May. Is there a question from our students? Because you explained more, but on the effect of Islamophobia and the second impact of the society in Britain and in Europe related to this condition, and how far people with people of color and maybe people who wears veil or people with Arab or maybe Asian facial expression maybe looks more threatening rather than any others, maybe people or citizens from around the world. Is it question from our students or something like that?
So can you rephrase the question again, please?
Okay, your explanation related how far the Islamophobia and the impact for maybe Muslim diaspora in Europe, is it the effect of it, or maybe the aftermath effect of after British exit from Europe, or maybe the growing instance of Islamophobia in Europe? I mean, is it the phenomenon because of the escalating view of escalating conflict in Middle East, especially after Israel attacks, or it happens before it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it will escalate. From like after it will escalate because as I mentioned about the prevent, one of the key plan of the contest, or basically known as counter-terrorism strategy, and the prevent. I remember reading somewhere, and one of them is basically being pro-Palestine, or basically, showing your basically being pro-Palestine can basically make you get referred to prevent, and that would be for October 7th. So now we have what happened October 7th, and because of what happened with anti-Semitism, unfortunately have gotten high as well, and Jewish people have felt unsafe, and also synagogue have been attacked as well. So it is a concerning phenomenon for them as well. But because of that, as well, it actually causes sometimes people often equate being pro-Palestine as anti-Semitic, or sometimes people do not know where the boundary is, and that's the problem there. So I that if you look at the policy that I mentioned, basically, as I mentioned, that policy is actually involved. So it got started from Al Qaeda from the 9/11, and then also 7/7 attack in the UK, but also, the ISIS attack in just the last basically last decade, and now we have what happened of what happened with Hamas, and this basically can introduce more policy. And just bear in mind that in the UK we have a Home Secretary. We're trying to ban the process. That was before October 7th. And people who protesting against immigration bills, the Home Secretary want to basically deport immigration to Rwanda. People basically people seeking refugee, basically asylum seekers, basically trying to deport them to Rwanda. The people were basically trying to protest for that, and because of that, she's trying to ban the protest, and they've been billed, and that's what's called billed. And also, she wanted to scrap a Human Rights Act bill, and one of them is related to basically protest or freedom of speech, stuff like that. There seems to be a lot of limitation, and all these kind of motives have happened before. So imagine that can be used as basically their own advantage to kind of basically amend the policy. And bear in mind that with policy stuff like that, it has to go through the House of Law. And if the House of Law rejected it, that's great. But, sometimes if they are back with examples of evidence why we should have certain policy, it can be approved, and that can basically jeopardize people's rights. And, we have instance like with Germany. In Germany, it seemed to be a very tricky hot topic. But in UK, we have it's such a similar situation, but very different background, and you have to understand the reason behind it is very different, because UK is more talking about counterterrorism, where Germany is more to do with anti-Semitism. And yeah, but the context is so similar, and there's an overlap, and this is where we kind of need to understand that's what I meant by Islamophobia, and it's that's where there's the correlation of Islamophobia, and that's what made it Islamophobia. Islamophobia is such a complex term, and I often try not to use that term. I instead use the term either anti-Muslim prejudice or anti-Muslim racism. This is where intersectionality come along. So I think, this is just my own prediction, I think maybe in the next 10, 20 years, there might be a bit more policy that shall prevent in relation to October 7 attack, which means that we don't know what can happen to people who basically supported the Palestinian cause, meaning that whether they're able to protest freely or whether they're able to express their view freely at the workplace or school or university. And that's where I'm kind of worried about. But at the same time, we're very fortunate to have an organisation like Liberty. They're actually a human rights organisation, and they have been basically advocating against basically illegalizing protest, also against basically dropping the Bill of Human Rights Act. And we even have Amnesty International basically recognizing this kind of stuff. So when we have this kind of stuff, that's something that we are grateful for. And just to give you a bit of assurance that if for those of you want to visit in the UK, do not worry, because especially in London, Islamophobia is not as bad as it is in other countries in Europe. Because I don't think, like, if you were to experience something like that, you can easily report it, and it's actually illegal. Like, even if you basically discriminate people because of their religion, that's illegal. So basically, you can wear a headscarf. If someone discriminates you for wearing your headscarf, if your employer says you can't wear them, you can take them to the court because it's illegal in the UK. That's why we're very lucky we have that right. And this is my concern when I was talking about when the government wants to remove the Human Rights Act. That concern and that right is actually fit under the bill. And bear in mind, there's a load of rights there. So that is worrying, but we're very lucky we still have that right. So yeah, so far it's not as bad as it is in other countries in Europe, if I'll be honest. This may be optimistic. I think we have other people want to ask questions. Abisha?
Yes, am I audible enough?
Yeah, already here, Abisa. Thank you. You can
Okay,
turn
thank
on your microphone and explain your question to Ms. May. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So my question here is basically like I'm seeing that there's like an exception in like how Europe is with their response to the October 7th attacks, because maybe what I wanted to ask specifically is how is the situation in the UK, like specifically like from the Irish MPs and like the maybe Sinn Féin members in the UK, because it seems like they're one of the few European countries who are actually for ceasefire and a free Gaza and Palestine, right? So like have they like went into or like comments about this ceasefire or any other actions in that form? That is my question. Thank you.
For the Isle of Man, Ireland is not part of the United Kingdom. They're actually independent from the United Kingdom. Have position, I think they support the Palestine, and because they treated. If you remember, I'm not sure if you knew about the Irish famine, and yeah, because of that, obviously they don't have a really good relationship with the UK. I'm not talking about diplomatic, but I'm talking about just more in personal stuff. And so when you've been oppressed, you know what it's like to be oppressed, and then obviously tend to support other people, other countries that have been oppressed as well. So that's why with the Irish MP, they're actually part of the EU, and Ireland is still part of the EU. That's why Ireland, when we talk about Irish MP, we're so lucky to have them because their voice is so important, especially majority MP in the EU. They don't seem to speak out about what happened in Gaza, and especially when you have a Ursula, and she basically seems to be a supporter of Israel. And not just that, there's just a lot of people have criticized her for having double standards with Ukraine and what happened in Gaza. And this is where there's a lot of pressure, and you have to understand that country often feel pressure but a lot of countries, and that's why they tend to give their own view based on what majority have given their own thought. So for instance, in the UK, like I said, Home Secretary, she made the comment, making comments saying that pro-Palestinian march is actually hate march, or saying from a river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is actually anti-Semitic slogan, and the comments actually do have an influence people decision making. People specifically are not completely, I would say, an expert in topics like this. We basically make decisions based on their superior, and this is really interesting because, for example, in 3 weeks ago, we have an MP that basically lost their job, basically for calling ceasefire. I mean, just for calling ceasefire, and just got sacked for it. And last week we have a vote in the parliament where the MP have to vote whether they want for the ceasefire or not, and majority of them have basically abstained their vote. And particularly majority of these numbers actually from a Labour Party, and only basically about 293 have voted against ceasefire, and they were by a majority and of that vote. And even though we have a lot MP, more than that, had abstained, but they don't count that, only count what had been voted, whether you vote for yes or no. And unfortunately, we got 293 actually basically asked for against ceasefire, and that was upsetting for many people. Especially in last week, people were over there outside the parliament protesting. We had about 15,000 people protesting while they were voting. So imagine how they feel, not just they, but other people around the world, been protesting. And when you have a government that actually not calling for ceasefire, that is the problem. And also, like I said, with the Labour Party, who have abstained the vote, also because they've been pressured. The MPs have been pressured to not to vote, or their job will be at risk. So a lot of think about 10 MPs have either been made redundant or basically were sacked from their jobs, and that's from last week. And for example, my MP in my local area, he is also from a Labour Party, and he actually said, he made a statement saying that he's not going to partake in voting until the ceasefire had been negotiated. That is a problematic term. How can you negotiate ceasefire? And it doesn't make sense. I mean, you can't really negotiate ceasefire. People are dying. What can you negotiate from that? It doesn't solve anything. More people are dying. People are being forced displaced, and people are losing their friends and family. That I have friends in Gaza that I'm worried about. I have not heard from, and it is a worry. It is worry, and also it does not cause any conflict between Israel and Palestine. If you actually want to bring a peace between these countries, you're not helping by actually talking about negotiating. You have to call a ceasefire, and so much damage have been done, and this is the problem. And the UK is one of them in the UN, and in UK and America, and I think it was Japan. I'm not sure if it was Japan, but I think it was Japan. The country basically have voted against ceasefire, and that was like 3 weeks ago. But in the end, if all countries have voted for ceasefire, that's when Israel have to comply, have to basically stop bombing Gaza. And unfortunately, that's not happening, and that is a problem, unfortunately. And that's what I'm talking about, when politics have often basically taken side, and especially when people have a higher power, they often feel a bit reluctant and have to follow what their other peers doing, and that is not necessarily helpful, especially when you're on actually sovereign state. You should basically follow what people feel, and no, like I said, in the UK, majority of people in the UK, whether you're Muslim or not, have basically supported the idea of ceasefire, just like many people around the world have. It's just the politicians making it difficult for themselves. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, that is how they answered my question. If I may ask again,
Sure.
from your observations, have the support for Palestine been spread out evenly across the UK, or has it been specifically sprouted out from specific areas that has significant Muslim populations only? Because I know
Actually,
London has a significant one, right? Like Sadiq Khan and the others in the area.
okay. It's actually quite diverse if you think about it, and it does seem like a lot of the people who support Palestine tend to be Muslim or actually Arab. Actually, no. For example, there's a protest where you get mixture of people, you get mixture of Jewish people, you get mixture of people, white people, black people of all color, people basically from all different kind of faith background, or even non-faith as well. People generally who want to basically support human rights for Palestinians in Gaza and even in the West Bank, they will basically participate in a protest. It's not just happening in London, but happening in many cities. And if you for example in Scotland, we have a basically a leader in Scotland, Hamda, and he basically his wife's Palestinian, and he basically, it was unfortunate that his parent-in-law were trapped in Gaza, and that was happening during October 7th, and he have often appeared on news expressing concern, and I think that kind of helped a bit in getting a public sympathy for Palestinians, because they can see that it's just normal citizens have been trapped in Gaza for something they didn't even do, and they were kind of victims in bombing, and not just that, they've been forced to displace down to south and not be able to leave the border that easily, and electricity being cut off. So it was a bit worrying there. So that you get a lot of protests in all over the UK, basically in Wales, in England, and also in Scotland. And so in England, for example, I remember on Sunday I was coming from somewhere and I was taking the train. There was protests outside a station. It's not even central London. It's just basically it's a small town in London, and there was also a protest just near my home at the outside the MP office. So there's a protest everywhere in London, not just one specific location, it's everywhere. And London is a big city. I don't consider it as a big city, but some people may do. But do you get a lot of protests around the area, and not just London, but outside London? So even people protesting at university. And for example, like you get a Palestinian society across university, and even Orman University in the UK had a Palestinian society, and people have basically released statements. So this kind of stuff, we have that kind of right there. And, that's something is common than you think. And people who participate are not just Muslim or Arab. People of basically all faith, or non-faith, or people from different kind of ethnic backgrounds, just basically share same cause, same advocacy, just basically either want to decolonizing in Palestine, or basically want to support human rights for Palestinian, or this kind of stuff. That what people have common cause, and this is a lot more common than you think.
Thank you for the answers and the explanations. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Thank you, Abisa, for the question. And we already know that what happens in Palestine and Israel somehow not only focus on certain city in Britain. It's right, Miss May? Hello, Miss May, can you hear my voice?
Yeah, can you repeat that question, please?
Oh, no, it's not a question. Just emphasize your statement that the magnitude of the magnitude of conflict, and maybe the protester in Britain, maybe it comes across the nation, not just in several cities that has a significant number of Middle East immigrants. Is it right?
Like immigrant, but a lot of them are definitely in UK. People who have immigrant background tend to have a British citizenship. So at that time, before like before 20 years ago, you can get British citizen quite easily. So a lot of them who actually basically come from immigrant parents are actually British. So that's probably why it was easy for them to process when you have that kind of right as a British citizen, as opposed to people who just immigrant. That can be difficult, and that's probably be another reason in Germany. For example, majority Muslim in Germany are actually Turkish, and not all of them have a German citizenship, even though they were born in the country. But quite a lot of them, are actually not German, but naturalized German. So they're actually basically a Turkish citizen. So if they were to kind of get involved in process, that it can basically skip the right to live in Germany, even though they were born in that country. So yeah, that is an interesting question about immigrants, and that's probably another reason why it's difficult for people to vocalize their support in what happened in Palestine in Germany, as opposed to what happened in the UK, based on people they have I believe that we have Kizarani. I'm not sure if I said your name correctly, but you've got your hand up.
Okay. Sarani, you can open the microphone and maybe you can explain the question to Ms. Mai Anwar. Thank you. Hello, Sarani. Can you hear our voice?
Yes, I can hear your voice.
Thank you.
Okay, am I audible?
Okay, you're already audible now.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. So I would like to ask a question to Miss or Mrs. May. So, there has been there's something that I thought for let's say for quite times when it comes to Islamophobia. Where in this case you've told us about the case of 7-Eleven that turned sour and make the belief of the people regarding with the Muslim view towards universe, like they thought as Muslim is bad and etc. But in my own perspective, I don't think that's justify the cases of why Islamophobia does exist, because there has been so many cases of vandalism that made, for example, like shooting by the teenager of from US, or cases and how other religions people that have another religion that burned holy book of Quran, or vandalism regarding bombing is in several mosques, comparing with the case of 7-Eleven or damage that has been made by Muslim in all over the world. I think it's their crime are bigger than what they thought. How can the cases that happen like vandalism, like burning the Holy Quran, or casing of murder, shooting in U.S. or several other country here overshadowed by the fears of Islamophobia. And what's more surprising is that after that overshadow like Islamic phobic that has been occurring in all over the world, suddenly out of 75 suffering in Palestine, people suddenly like cheering up like free Palestine and stuff. Do you think that there is a possibility that the people that is cheering on free Palestine and stuff, that they're doing it for political affairs benefit or something? It's because after so many times when that occurring, like people like like blinded and stuff. So I would like to hear your opinion regarding with this, please, Mrs. May.
Okay. So just to kind of just to clarify your point, I'm just to make sure I get it correctly. So you are just basically saying that you basically believe that the Islamophobia just not basically come from October the 7th attack, or basically 9/11. I'm not so sure what is exactly you don't believe. Basically, what is your point? Can you summarize it just briefly, just to make sure I get it correctly?
So you asked me to replay my question, is that so?
Yeah, I'm asking you a question. So basically, I just want to clarify your point. Your point you made about how you believe that Islamophobia didn't necessarily come from October the 7th, is that correct? Or if you believe it didn't come from 9/11 or 7/7, I'm not so sure what exactly the point that you're making, just specifically that point.
Oh, so I'm putting 9/11 because that is what affect the most of the people views regarding with Islamophobia. Because yes, that has been so many victim of that. That has been a turning point why Muslim were hated in the case of Middle East. But my question is, yes, there is a problem like 9/11 and stuff that makes and Eastern problem that makes in Muslim look bad in the view of international. But my question would be, even though with non-Muslim, they also commit like heinous crime like murder and racism towards Muslim that actually bigger than what I think. So my question is, how does the cases about the racisms uh, in non-Muslim here overshadow their fears of Muslim? Here, so like Muslim is always considered bad, even though that non-Muslim believer also did worse when it comes to Islamophobia. And yeah, after all so many racism going on, Islamophobia going on, then suddenly come emerging like free Palestine and stuff. My question would be, do you there is a possibility that this free Palestine stuff might be regarding with the political affairs in that nation, or something that might benefits those people?
Yes, I do think that is the case. I agree with the point you were making, and just to kind of clarify, I do not necessarily believe Islamophobia comes from 9/11. Yeah, just it actually triggered it, but it actually come from before that, and I'm sure a lot of you know that. And I think it become a bit more to the point where it had called the media attention. If you look at the Iranian Revolution in the 1979 and the satanic affair by Salman Rushdie. So the book itself was basically in the 80s, and it does cause a reaction among the public view, and if Islamophobia itself, people, especially the way people view Islamophobia or perceive Islamophobia, the view itself have basically evolved. And so when I talk about Palestine, that is going to influence Palestine. As I mentioned earlier on, when Israel had associated Palestine as ISIS, so when we can see that basically a correlation from a terrorist attack that basically connecting to another form of terrorist organization, like we talk about Al-Qaeda from the 9/11 and also 7/7, and then talk about ISIS attack can happen in the last 10 years or more, and then equating Hamas, it is such a problematic term. When you basically equating Hamas with ISIS, and when basically saying that Hamas is actually Palestinian as a human shield, it has been such a tricky question when you talk about what in free Palestine, and people often say free Hamas or free Palestine, stuff like that. When you talk about it, because people often forget the history in Palestine, and it did not just happen in October 7 or in the last 10-20 years. It happened since before the Nakba in the 1948. Starting from Balfour Declaration in the early 19, or actually in the early 90s or early 20th century, as you say it. So it is concerning that. And then when we talk about the influence basically between the British Empire and the Ottoman Empire, and that is there's the overlap, and the history of Palestine is such an interesting. There have been a lot of conquest in Palestine, especially specifically in Jerusalem. It have a lot of basically geo religion politics. When it comes to Jerusalem, there's a lot of history behind it in terms of religion, politics, and that's why I believe when you talk about Islamophobia, it often plays a role. And then when you talk about the policy, stuff like that, and talk about how it created. So when you talk about secularism, stuff like that, you have a question, where did it come from? And it comes from certain faith faith that did not welcome other people's faith background. And so, for example, like when you talk about secularism, it actually comes from from the Westphalian in Germany many years ago. Century years ago, like 3 centuries years ago, and that was kind of between about kind of separating the church from the state, and it kind of basically focused on specific faith background, and which make it harder to be inclusive for other faith backgrounds. And then when you talk about Islam or Muslim community, you know, people have a different rule and they follow, and then it has made it harder for people to basically express their religion freely without jeopardizing the Western value. And that is the problematic. And when you talk about Palestine itself, it just not happened October 7. I agree with you. It just not happened 10 or 20 years ago. It happened a long time ago. And you have to understand the history behind it. And you see when the country, for example in the UK, is complicit behind the whole situation, which made it harder for people to feel sympathetic what happened in Gaza. And also when you talk about the political aspect, or when you talk about diplomatic aspect, where a country had a right to defend themselves, you know, in general, yes, the country had a right to defend themselves, but they also had a responsibility. If you're actually occupying a state, you have a responsibility in providing water, resources, stuff like that. That's your responsibility, and that's what the violation of human rights there. And people who talk about from colonialism aspect, and you can see a majority of people that support Palestine would often kind of apply the concept of decolonizing Palestine, or you know, stuff like this, because you know what happened in Palestine is a form of neo-colonialism, and Islamophobia is actually basically one of the products that can come from kind of basically created, or not created, but more like produced or grow or triggered from neo-colonialism. And it's just not just addicted then, because when you talk about in the past, and if you look at for example Edward Said himself, when you talk about Orientalism, how the West perceive the East as barbaric and stuff like that. So the ideology of supporting Palestine, stuff like that, you have a neo-colonialist perspective where people equate supporting Islamophobia as supporting Hamas, and in a way basically encouraging people that supporting Palestine as barbaric, and basically anything that do not align with the British value or align with their own standards, we are going to be pushed aside. And usually Muslims tend to be pushed aside because they don't agree with the values, and you know that is the problem there. And it just not happened, you know, 9/11 happened a lot more ago, and especially when you talk about colonialism, it have such a, I think colonialism is actually a record of many other things. It's such a complex topic. It's such a Islamophobia. It's intervened a lot of factors behind it, and colonialism is one of them. What happened 9/11, 7/7, you know, Palestine, stuff like that. It's a lot of element, which is really hard for people to focus on certain thing as one issue. And often when I say intervene, it's so hard to separate as well, because you don't know how to separate it. And that's why it's so important. Instead of separating it, look at the root cause of the problem, what causes it to happen, and see how it grows, and that way you'll be able to have a clarity to understand the complex of Islamophobia and what causes it, and why it's such a problematic term, and why it's not been done. That is the question we have to ask. Why, what has not been done, and why Islamophobia is still such a problematic term for certain people. That is, I mean, we're in the 21st century, we're in 2023. 2023, it is a lot, we have many years that to basically sort our stuff out, and we have not done that. So that is the question there.
Okay, so currently, you already satisfied with Mrs. May's comprehensive answer related on your Islamophobic and the gaining occurrence of people vandalizing religious symbol of Islam, like burning the Holy Quran, or especially say hateful speech to Muslim community and etc. It's not about just the policy, but also what happens in the grassroots opinion, and also the challenge to grow side by side when the growing of ethno-nationalism in Europe. Cesarini, is it okay?
Thank you.
Hello?
Hello. Yes, thank you so much
Okay. Yeah.
for Mrs. May regarding with your answer, because maybe I need to learn through more regarding with the conceptual of Islamophobia. But I thought it's simply on 9/11 days. I just really like, why Islamophobia? Then you're telling us about regarding many years ago about the Turkey and yes, the British and stuff. I should look up more into that. So thank you so much for the insights. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely recommend you look into it. My advice would be if you have not read Edward Thayer's book, definitely read it, but also read into Joseph Massas. I'm gonna write in the comment. Joseph Massas, he had a book called The Daring Arab, and this is such a good book to read to understand about Islamophobia, specifically early time, and when you talk about the overlap between the colonialism and Islamophobia, it actually give you a better understanding that this kind of stuff is actually still existed, and there's a lot of overlap. So I definitely recommend reading that book. Just left in the comments, if you haven't, please read it. It actually really helped a lot.
Hello, Sarini. Do you have any more elaborate question to Ms. Mai?
No, I don't think so. Maybe it's more like me trying to look out for more regarding with this. And yes, Miss May answer has giving like some sort of enlightenment. But yeah, I've got to look out more regarding with this. And yes, giving answers. Thank you so much for
Okay, thank you.
the.
Thank you, Cesarani. Hello, can you hear my voice, Miss Mai? Is it right?
Yeah, I can hear
Or
you.
maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I have technical issue with my earphone and the connection in here is rather poor. I'm so sorry if I going back and forth to join this meeting with you. I think the question is already answered all, and here is the last session of our today's discussion. I'm sorry if my voice is very little or do not have good voice. Hello, May, can you hear my voice? Hello,
I can hear
May,
your voice.
can you hear my voice? It's okay.
I can hear your voice.
Okay. In here, okay. Thank you, Kasarini. You're welcome. In here, thank you for today's discussion that we learned so much about how that really happens in the Europe, effectively after the condition in Europe and your position as a Middle Eastern diaspora in there, especially in UK. In here, I would like to say thank you to Mr. May for today's Miss May for today's discussion, and we learned so much about what kind of Islamophobia in Europe, and by your explanation, we learned that even in Germany, it's have different point or different condition than in United Kingdom. Maybe it has different condition too in Scandinavian nation. So in here we can conclude that the Islamophobia in there somehow is very heterogeneous. Is it right, Ms. Mai? The response of the Islamophobia itself is very different across the nation in Europe, whether it is in UK, in Germany, or even in the Scandinavian nation. Even though there is no such kind of extremism, violence, like burning the holy book of Quran in maybe in UK rather than in Scandinavian nation, but we also know that there are some kind of policy that bring the maybe Islamophobic in UK also not in a good condition, I think. And we also learned that as a woman, you have already post maybe quite uncomfortable condition because of your appearance, your religious appearance, and it also happens not only in Middle Eastern diaspora but also the whole Muslim woman who choose to use scarf. That discrimination still exists now, and is it quite bad condition because we also have the same condition in country in here. So, is there any question maybe for today's session? Mr. Maula, you can summon your class presentation maybe if you have any question. Is there any question to Miss Mai before I
there
close
is
the
a
session?
the question from Paulino.
Paulino, can you hear our voice? Can you open your microphone? And then
Yeah.
after that,
So he basically left a question in the chat box, but I'm going to read that. So he said, based on my observation, looking at so basically based on your observation, looking at several social movements supporting Palestine based on human rights compliance to have emerged in Europe, are these social movements also carrying out and incorporating the agenda of secularizing Islamophobia and the existence of Islam in Europe, especially in the UK? If so, how did the social movement create tension in the UK? Okay, so it's interesting when you phrase that question. It depends how when you talk about it. For example, I think at the moment when I look at social movement as such as like specifically that supported Palestinian cause, like such as the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, they mainly focused on organizing the protest and stuff like that, these kind of stuff. But then you get other kind of like social movements, it's stuff like, for example, like social media or stuff like that. People, like when I talk about individual, people often vocalize the consequence of the aspect of Islamophobia. In terms of Islamophobia, the consequence of it is Palestine. So they would talk about that. And for example, like I say, being reported, and for example, there is a organization called Islamophobia Response Unit, and they are responsible for taking Islamophobia report. And during that the early period, they have basically released a statement on Twitter saying that if you or anyone have basically have experienced not be able to vocalize their support for Palestine because they're worried about losing their job, stuff like that, or something like that, or even experience Islamophobia, they would ask to be to report it to them. And same thing with Tell Mama. They've asked for people to report Islamophobia, and so they would ask to report it. And so this is what this is actually more common than you think. But when you talk about social movement itself, there's overlap, and every human rights organization would actually talk about Islamophobia is a problematic concern in the UK. But when you talk about social movement, they're not a human rights organization, they're just a social movement. So that's why these kind of two separate things. So when I talk about human rights organization, I'm talking about liberty or Amnesty International, stuff like that. They will kind of talk about the consequence of what happened in Palestine, have called it anti-Semitism, racism, and even Islamophobia. They will address that. When you talk about social movement, they kind of focus on one specific thing. So that's why they wouldn't necessarily talk about it, not because they don't want to talk about it, it's because they focus on one thing and you have other organizations talk about it, the consequence of it. So it is quite diverse, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because you want to kind of focus one thing, keep it one thing, and that's what they are designed for. So, for example, Palestinian Solidarity Campaign talk about just for the process, raising awareness, stuff like that, and then you get Liberty talking about or even Human Rights Watch, Amnesty. Like for example, Human Rights Watch have basically Human Rights Watch has basically released a statement 3 weeks ago on people who have been impacted by algorithm on social media. Like for example, Instagram, if you've been sharing stuff about Palestine, your view gone lower, and that is censorship. And they have asking people to report that, and that is something there, and that if have Islamophobic tone, if people have a case based on that where they experience Islamophobia, that will be reported anyway. And that's what a human rights organization is there for, because they are going to report it, and it is one of the human rights concerns. And yeah, that is something common in the UK. It is considered a human rights concern, even though the term is problematic. But still, like I said, you can value Islamophobia as human rights concern, and that's what we're lucky in that context. But as opposed to in other European contexts like Germany and stuff like that, it's such a problematic term. People don't need it at a time. They need anti-Muslim racism just to make the point that they are being subjected to human rights abuse. And you can't define Islamophobia because to them it's just an ideology, just having a fear against Muslim or don't agree with Islamic view, and that's why it's really hard to use that term, and it's used in the UK because it's not acceptable in the European context. I mean, in general, it's not acceptable, but in the UK context, in the British context, it's not okay to be Islamophobic because you can get people who suspected to be Islamophobic, they can get arrested, and it can be a legal case. So we're lucky for that. And that's why there's no need for a social movement. We need to find a way to secure rights, but especially when you talk about Palestine, because like I said, human rights organisations are there for that reason. But what there is need for is actually for the government action to challenge Islamophobia. It's been lack of it, and that's the problem there. So there are people from different organisations, like for example, MEN, the Muslim Engagement Organisation. They talk about Islamophobia, and they actually trying to find a way to challenge it. So, like I said, the organisation focused certain topic, and there will be a little bit overlap, but that's not their focus. So I hope that explains your question, even though like I said, when you have an organisation that focuses in one cause, it's important to focus that cause, because you have other organisations focusing on that other cause that you're thinking about. But what they can do is not rare. It's actually quite common that you think they would come in collaboration and give a seminar, stuff like that, or maybe help out writing a parliamentary recommendation, stuff like that. That is possible, and I can see that happening in the future. Like maybe a social movement that support Palestine can come in collaboration with a organisation like MEN in writing recommendation, policy and analysis, stuff like how Islamophobia have been impacted because of what happened in Palestine. That can happen.
Okay, Paulino, is it the answer from Mrs. Mai's question for your question related to how far this condition shapes the social movement in Europe? Hello, Paulino. Can you hear my voice? If you don't, let's go to the last question from the student from Introduction to Political Science. Maybe the PIC, the lecturer in there, already raised their hand. Maybe you can open your microphone. Thank you for Ms. Mai. Because the time is up, please open up your question.
I would say one thing that the British community in the UK, that when we have a the British Muslim, identity politics often playing a role. So a lot of Muslims, specifically from my generation, will take part in participating in challenging Islamophobia. So a lot of them would take part in many various ways. So for example, like some may take part in political activity, stuff like even join parliamentary group, or some may take part in interfaith work or activity or campaign. Because for example, from our parent generation back in the 80s or 60s, stuff like that, it's especially when English is not the first language, or they may not have it that kind of resources, like academic resources, where they can vocalize their concern for Islamophobia and or even racism. But nowadays we have people or generation often basically establish a NGO or even grassroots organization that actually challenge Islamophobia. So I will say that that's kind of a product for Muslim identity politics, and people often utilize Muslims often utilize identity politics as a way to cope, as a way to challenge Islamophobia, and a way to show that they want to be part of the mainstream society, at the same time being a Muslim. And that is basically my research about how Muslims utilize identity politics. And this is something very interesting when you talk about identity politics, and especially with Palestine, where in Kufiya or even Palestinian flag, and these are Palestinian, that's their heritage as well, but people need it and may have it for different meanings as well. And that it can be a form of identity politics to show their resistance, or to show this can be a form of identity politics. And at the same time, in general context, like Muslim, who you get an MP in the UK that wear hijab, and that's interesting form of identity, use of identity within politics too as well. So this is why we're quite lucky at this moment to have a representative of British Muslim community that are willing to vocalize their support against Islamophobia and be able to challenge Islamophobia and stuff like that, and be able to work with human rights organizations like International Liberty or International, Human Rights Watch, that the mainstream human rights organization, even Amnesty International, stuff like that. It actually helps a lot. And like I said, Human Rights Watch have basically take their statistics from Mama. And Mama is actually founded by a Muslim individual in the UK. So this is really important. That's why a lot of Muslims, I encourage them, if you experience Islamophobia, report it for sure. But if you have the ability to take part in challenging Islamophobia, definitely go for it, because it's so important that we need your voice. It doesn't matter how big or small your voices are. If you have the ability to do so, take part of it, because your insight is so valuable, and we all receive different kind of education, and we can contribute our perspective and our knowledge in a way we can to change and basically make life easier for Muslims, especially for future generation, because unfortunately it's not getting easier, it's somehow getting worse, especially in the West. But we can make it work by being actively taking part of the society, challenging as well. That is so vital as well. I mean, this is something I would encourage for everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Mai. I think is there one question from our students in Introduction to Political Science. Mas Maula, can you open your microphone for Ms. Mai?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. So, I want to ask about the current situation and how your region responding to this issue, knowing that our country in Indonesia, they are supporting a lot to Palestine. Thank you.
Of course,
Can you
that's what
say your name first? And you can introduce yourself to Ms. Mai, what kind of place did you attend? Maybe after that, you can open your question. Where are you come from, students? Hello. Hello, fellow students. Mas Maula, can you help us?
Okay. Okay, so yeah, sorry. My name is Faisal Lamsyah. I'm from the student of Introduction to Political Science. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe Ms. Mai, can you understand this question? Or he should repeat again this question? Okay.
Definitely. I'm going to talk about Indonesia, and honestly, I have to commend Indonesia for basically continuously supporting people in Gaza and also the Palestinian cause. And I think a lot of European Muslims probably feel that you guys are lucky to be able to express that really quite freely in Indonesia without worrying being arrested, stuff like that. So yeah, definitely great work. But when I'm talking about just to kind of go back to my point, when I talk about Islamophobia, I meant in the general context, specifically in the West. This is what I mean by utilizing your resources or utilizing your whatever background you have, knowledge, stuff like that, to be able to contribute in challenging it, because like I said, it can get worse. It's not just facts of what happened October 7th, but a lot of elements behind it. That's what we're talking about in this context, not specifically to do with whether supporting or not for Palestine. That wasn't my concern there. It was more about just in general context that where I was kind of commending the neutralization of identity politics, because stuff like this, it was so helpful in challenging Islamophobia, because we have so many NGOs in the UK that actually focus certain things and more establishing stuff like that. We have Islamophobia Awareness Month in the UK, and that happening this month at the moment, I believe. And yeah, stuff like this, it's actually quite helpful. And these kind of stuff actually for campaigning about Muslims, and this is what I mean. The more you do stuff like this, the more you can do more campaign and advocacy that can lead actually more on secularization of Islamophobia, and basically having Muslim for to kill being Muslim as well. But that is it basically is the one way of doing it, and that's what I'm trying to say. In that context, without making a dig on basically saying that lack of support. That's not what I'm saying. If that makes sense.
Hello. For the last question. Is it okay? The answer from Ms. Mai?
Okay.
Thank you.
That's enough. That's enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any question from your class?
Sorry.
Is there any other question from your class from Introduction to Political Science?
Oh, okay. That's enough. Thank you. That's enough
Okay,
for
thank
us.
you.
Yeah.
So there is no other question from your class?
Yeah.
No other question
There's
from
no
your
other
class?
questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question. Here we go, Miss Mai. I think it's the very last question because the whole class already focused on your presentation too. So our discussion not only in our laboratory but also streaming online through the class of Introduction to Political Science. Both of them in the laboratory and also in the class, especially in the Introduction to Political Science. We hope that all of the participants already know what happens in Middle East and what kind of Islamophobia that happens through Europe, especially from your primary experience both as a Middle Eastern diaspora and also political scientist in there. And we hope so all of the information from your experience and your thesis, but for myself personally, I really know more about the intersectionality theory that you try to ex express to us, that the audience to knows more than one theoretical framework to understand the phenomenon. I think it's very, very quite insightful, interesting in one way. But in here, we have very limited time on condition, so I'd like to close up our discussion today. And also, we would like to say thank you for your uh, willingness to go to our discussion, and maybe from the next discussion we can talk to you later. Do you want to have any discussion with us, Miss May? Maybe on the next year?
Yeah, I'm happy
Okay.
to. Yeah. But like,
Okay,
just
because
want to say that
yeah,
if anyone else
Miss-
have a further question or maybe feel a bit shy to ask, particularly in this session, feel free to email me. You know, I'm sure she can basically Palupi can basically give you my email address, and you
okay.
can send me email and any question. I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mai. May I ask your permission to go to send the email address to our students,
Cool.
and I would like to inform it to you if there are any question, both directly or indirectly to you. I will express the question well, and maybe if Ms. Mai okay, I would share the email address to the students. Okay, Ms. Kai?
Sure.
Okay, thank you for your appearance in our discussion, Ms. May, and I hope we can have a further discussion related to your topic and maybe another topic related to your maybe your postgraduate thesis or even anything related to Middle East conflict and Islamophobia in Europe, and maybe we can have any discussion later after this semester finished, maybe on the next year. And next, we maybe have a further discussion related to your experience as Middle East diaspora, not just about Islamophobia, but any other interesting topic. Thank you, all the participants, both in the IRUD laboratories and also in the Introduction to Political Science class. Mr. Maula is the lecturer, Ms. May is the participant, and all of the committee. Thank you for your experience in here. Maybe, do you want to take any photo with us, Ms. May? I will send
Sure.
it to you through your email. Okay. Jadi teman-teman presenter, maaf, teman-teman panitia bisa ngambil foto ya. Mohon maaf, suara saya habis. Tolong dibantu untuk screen capture foto. Halo, Cindy, bisa bantu foto ya? Dan teman-teman yang masih di lab. Apakah udah oke?
Oke, Mbak.
Okay, please announce to Miss May that we would have to have screen capture together, and all of the participants that already join our discussion today can open your camera, and we should have prepared our best mind to this discussion. please ask if the photo session is already finished.
That's already finished. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Mai, for already joining our discussion, and we hope we have more interesting topic to discuss later, and see you on our next discussion. To all the participants, thank you. We will meet again maybe in the next year because it is our last session of the talks in this semester, and we hope you enjoyed our discussion. Okay, I would like to close the discussion. Selamat sore. Good evening. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore. Thank you, Miss Mai. Thank you. Have a nice day.